Hey guys, welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be doing another painting over my pen sketches video. This time I will be using my miya gouache, which I actually intended for sketches like this, so I'm really excited. And I am also including the sketching stage because I've had comments asking me to include this stage. I didn't really think that this part was that exciting, to be honest, so in most of my videos in this series I just left them out, but today we're going to include it. The pens that I'm using for sketching are from two brands, but honestly the other one I can't remember the name of. I just got it from a local store, and the other one is my Flex Sticks pen. From my experience, I haven't really noticed that much of a difference between these red pens that I use. I've gotten questions about how they don't bleed, and honestly I've used so many brands and none of them bleed with what I do with them. I've painted over them with loose paints, I've painted over them with thicker paints, and I haven't experienced any bleeding in any of them, at least not that I can remember, so I don't actually think that it matters that much. Another thing that I get asked is why I use these red pens. I just really like sketching with them because they're not as dark as black inked pens, and I think that a lot of it has to do with it being a mental thing because they're so cheap that I don't feel any pressure when I'm drawing with them. My sketches look more free and looser, and I really like my sketches when I use these. And also, because they aren't as dark as black pens, I think that it gives me the opportunity to layer them from dark to light if I ever need to add more details like I needed to on this one. I would just use a black pen over it. And by the way, the black pen that I'm using is my Pilot G-Tech pen, which again isn't supposed to be waterproof, but also hasn't bled in any of my videos while I was doing this, so there's that. But you still might want to avoid using this pen if you are planning on painting over it with watercolors. I think that it's just too much of a risk to use watercolors over these. There's that tiny chance that it might bleed, but again, I haven't noticed it. So now that it's time to paint with my gouache, I'm so excited to say that I used a miya gouache for this one. And the reason why I'm so excited to talk about it this time is because the first time I used this particular set, I have tried it before and they got moldy, and so I just abandoned those and started using my Holbein gouache. But this set in particular, the only other time that I've used it is for my Alice in Wonderland video, which was also in the same series. But for that one, I talked about the graying that I've always noticed with the miya gouache not being that important because it went well with the reference photo and the gray tones in the reference photo. So for this time, I wanted to try and paint a scene that was darker but still very vibrant. There's lots of very dark colors in the scene that are different in use, like the dark yellows paired with the dark reds, and also some of the grays are very cool. I think that those colors are going to be a little bit more of a challenge compared to the overall greenish gray of my first Miya painting. So I went to this one, which is a scene from Harry Potter, and it's of Hermione brewing what I think is maybe the polyjuice potion in the second movie. And if I remember correctly, this was also in the girls' bathroom, so there's lots of elements to this sketch that I wanted to try and get in this painting. So for a second, I want to talk about my second attempt with this miya gouache, and I think now I have a better perspective of gouache in general, but also the miya gouache in particular. I think that I could give a better review for it now, so I am still gonna compare it to my Holbein's, which is really the only gouache that I have a comparable amount of experience to compare it to. And I did see that one comment that is essentially saying that I am comparing Louis Vuitton to Walmart clothes, which I think is funny, but not everyone is gonna want to spend that money on Louis Vuitton. And also, a lot of people who are wearing Walmart clothes want to know if it's worth it to upgrade to a more expensive brand, so that's why I do these comparisons. Also, I was one of those people that was stuck on using student quality gouache for a while, and I didn't really see that much of an incentive to upgrade my gouache until I really had to. So that's why I make these videos, and that's why I compare with those brands, even though they aren't in the same price range. But I'm so excited that the differences weren't that much of a leap from both of them, especially on this try. On my first one, I think that I was noticing so much of the graying in the colors because I was painting with so many grays. I can say that I did notice it, but only towards the end when I wanted to add those bright pops of color. I think those are the hardest to mix with the miya gouache, but throughout most of the time while I was painting this, I didn't notice any of the graying. What I can say is that towards the end is when I really was so tempted to just use my Holbein gouache, because it was just so hard to not let those colors contaminate each other. And you will see towards the end of the video that I actually just used a different palette altogether. Also just scoop out more paint so I can have colors that weren't contaminated by other colors yet, and that did help. But yeah, throughout most of this painting, the differences weren't as drastic as I thought they would be. I did notice one weird thing in that the lid that doubles as a mixing palette, I thought was still wet because it looked wet. It looked very glossy, and so I really was scared that my palette was gonna grow moldy again, and I was really scared that that would happen because that had happened to me before. But when I went to touch the palette to clean it off, it was actually dry, and I think that the miya gouache just has this weird sort of glossy, it's almost like jelly consistency to their paints, even when they're dry. It's not as noticeable as a finished piece in the painting in your paper, but when it was in my palette, it was so bizarre because it really did look wet, but it was dry to the touch. And I don't know if I have anything to compare it to. It's almost like how you see acrylic paints when they're dry, they still have this sort of glossy It's so minor, but it was just so apparent to me because none of my palettes when I was working with my Holbein gouache ever really looked like that. So I thought I would mention it. After I used this the first time, what I actually did was, thanks to advice from one of the comments on my videos, which I think is actually from Miguel, who had experience with the miya gouache, and he told me to leave out the paint to dry before storing them in case I would store them for a long time without using them, and I wouldn't want to do that if the paints were still wet. So that's what I did. I left my paint out to dry in under direct sunlight before I closed it for a few more weeks before I had time to use it again. And I'm so happy that I followed that advice because, as you can see, none of my paints were contaminated yet. I know that there was a high chance of that happening because it has happened to my wet watercolors and my first Himi gouache. So yeah, I'm so happy that it didn't happen this time. This painting might also be familiar to some of you guys because I actually painted most of this while streaming live. And by the way, if you were in that live stream, thank you so much for hanging out with me. I really am starting to enjoy these live stream and also full-time walkthroughs now. I want to do more live streaming, especially. It was so nice to hang out with most of you guys and get to know you better while I paint. I have a problem with talking so much, and so I feel like it's not that much of a problem while I'm live streaming. And I'm really just excited to talk about my painting and talk about other art stuff with you guys. I actually want to learn some of the basics about live streaming, like having you guys' chat on the screen while you guys are watching me paint. I also want to do group calls, which I think I'm going to try out on Discord first with my patrons before I can do it for my regular server. But yeah, I want to go back into streaming because I really enjoy talking to you guys, and it also helps me practice my English. Generally, just practicing talking in English has helped me a lot in my voiceover, so I'm really happy to talk as much as I can with you guys. For this one, just like a few of my videos in the series, I was really debating whether to do the background or not. I always have this thing where I want their silhouette to stand out over top of stark white background, but in most of those cases, I always feel like the lighting doesn't work well on its own, especially if it's just on the character. None of the lighting that's falling on her will make sense unless I do the background too. But I still don't want it to be too detailed, and so I just wanted to get the overall the general shapes of the stuff in the background, and also just to give ideas of the depth in the photo. And I also think that it was important to the scene that she was in the girls' bathroom for this one, as I think Hermione and the guys did a lot of their shenanigans in this bathroom. I think this was also around the time she turned into a cat person, so yeah, I wanted to show the location in a way. While I was painting this, I really was reminded of my love for the series. I think it was really fun to sort of revisit my fangirl days of Harry Potter because I was a huge fan of it for a while, but then some couple of years ago, I was sort of disenchanted with the fandom, I guess, because of some comments made by the author. But I think I'm in a place where I realize that I don't have to agree with everything a person says for me to enjoy some of their work. And so I shouldn't feel that much guilty for liking it in the first place. That being said, I think this may be my last Harry Potter repainting, but I want to have more suggestions from you guys of what I should paint. I've been getting a lot of these very insistent comments about painting Padme from Star Wars, and though I really want to do that, I think it'd be weird to do a repainting without actually watching the movie. Would it be? I don't really know, but I can officially say now that I will really be taking suggestions from the comments in this video and painting the scene from the suggestion that is most upvoted. So yeah, thank you guys for watching. Thank you again for joining me in the live stream. That was so much fun. I hope you guys join me on my other one too. Thank you for watching this video, and thank you to my patrons for supporting me still. You guys are the absolute best, and I will be seeing you guys again soon.